You're just jealous of your brother, Mom whispered as I blew out my birthday candles. So I snapped, fine, let your perfect son handle the bills, and canceled every payment I'd been covering for the family that night. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. This happened over the past 2 years, and I'm still processing it all. Some of you might think I went too far. Others will probably say I didn't go far enough. Either way, here's how I completely destroyed my toxic family after they spent years treating me like their personal bank account with legs. Fair warning, this is going to be long, like really long, but stick with me because this story has more twists than a pretzel factory and an ending that'll make you want to slow clap. So I, 29, male, work as a logistics coordinator for a regional shipping company in Phoenix. I handle supply chain management, vendor relationships, and freight coordination. It's not glamorous, but I'm good at it and make about $72,000 a year, which goes pretty far in Arizona if you're not supporting 3 other adults like I was. I rent a nice 2-bedroom apartment in Ahwatukee. Nothing fancy, but it's got a pool, decent neighbors, and it's mine. No roommates, no drama, just peace and quiet. Or at least it was peaceful until my family kept treating it like their personal customer service center. I've been working since I was 15. Started as a bag boy at Fry's grocery store, making $7.25 an hour and loving every penny because it was mine. Worked there through high school, then got a job at Target while going to community college. Nights, weekends, holidays, didn't matter. I was determined to pay my own way through school. Got my associate's degree in business administration, paid for entirely with student loans and my Target paychecks. No help from family, no handouts, just me grinding it out semester by semester. After graduation, I worked my way up from warehouse associate to my current position over 5 years. Every promotion earned, every raise justified by performance. My family? Well, that's a different story entirely. Mom Patricia is 54 and has never held a steady job in her adult life. And I mean never. She's had maybe a dozen jobs over the years, none lasting more than 8 months. There's always some excuse. The manager was mean, her coworkers were jealous, the work was too stressful for someone with her conditions. What conditions? Well, that depends on the week. Sometimes it's fibromyalgia, sometimes it's anxiety, sometimes it's chronic fatigue syndrome. Always something that's impossible to prove, but convenient enough to explain why she can't work. She spends most of her days watching daytime TV, scrolling Facebook, and complaining about how hard her life is to anyone who'll listen. She's got this victim mentality down to an art form. Everything that goes wrong is someone else's fault, and everyone owes her something because she's been through so much. Dad William is 56 and works sporadically at various warehouse and construction jobs. When he's working, he actually makes decent money, $18 to $20 an hour, which isn't bad for Phoenix. The problem is he can't hold a job to save his life. He's got this attitude problem where he thinks every boss is an idiot, and every workplace is beneath him. Shows up late, takes long lunches, argues with supervisors, then acts shocked when he gets fired. Between jobs, he sits around the house in his underwear, watching sports and playing mobile games on his phone. He'll spend weeks looking for work, which mostly involves browsing job sites for 5 minutes a day and then complaining that nobody wants to hire experienced workers anymore. And then there's my precious little brother Tyler, 26 years old, college dropout, still living at home, and the undisputed golden child of the family. Tyler is creative and just needs time to find his passion. He's been finding his passion for about 8 years now, while working maybe 12 hours a week at Dragon's Den, a local comic book and gaming store. Tyler's got this whole artist thing going on. He draws, writes stories, makes YouTube videos about comic books that get maybe 50 views each. Mom and Dad think he's going to be the next Stan Lee or something. Meanwhile, he makes about $400 a month and contributes exactly $0 to household expenses. But here's the thing about Tyler. He's charming. He's funny. He's got this easy confidence that makes people want to like him. He can walk into a room and within 10 minutes, everyone thinks he's the coolest guy there. I used to admire that about him when we were kids. Now I realize it's just manipulation wrapped in charisma. The family dynamic was established early and never changed. Tyler was the fun one, the creative one, the one with potential. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who always figures things out. What that really meant was Tyler got praise for existing while I got ignored unless someone needed something fixed, paid for, or handled. Growing up, if Tyler got a C on a test, it was, well, you tried your best and that's what matters. If I got a B plus, it was, why wasn't this an A? We know you can do better. Tyler's mediocre drawings got hung on the refrigerator, like they were heading to the Louvre. My academic achievements got a pat on the head and a reminder not to get too big for my britches. In high school, Tyler played JV basketball for 2 seasons and quit because it was too much pressure. They talked about his brief athletic career for years, like he'd been recruited by Duke. I worked 20 hours a week, maintained a 3.8 GPA, and graduated with honors. They forgot to come to my graduation ceremony because Tyler had a really important comic convention that same weekend. College was more of the same. Tyler dropped out after 1 semester, claiming the professors didn't understand his creative vision. Mom and Dad were sympathetic. College wasn't for everyone. Maybe he'd be better off pursuing his art. At least he was following his dreams. When I graduated with my business degree, the family celebration was dinner at Applebee's, where they spent most of the meal talking about Tyler's latest comic book project. I genuinely thought this was normal family stuff. Every family has a favorite, right? Every family has different expectations for different kids. I told myself I was lucky to be seen as the capable one, the one they could count on. What I didn't realize was that the one they could count on was just code for the one who'll pay for everything. The financial manipulation started small when I was in college, around 2018. It was never presented as manipulation, of course. It was always family helping family, and just until we get back on our feet, and you know we'd do the same for you. It started with a phone call during my second year. Mom called crying. Dad had been laid off from his construction job. They were behind on rent. Could I help with groceries for just this week? I had maybe $200 in my checking account after tuition and books, but I sent her $100 because that's what you do for family, right? The next month it was the electric bill. The month after that, car insurance. There was always a crisis, always an emergency that required immediate financial intervention. And somehow, I was always the solution. John, honey, you're so good with money. Could you help us figure out this budget? John, you work with numbers all day. Maybe you could look at our bills? John, we hate to ask, but you're the only one who's got his life together. The requests got bigger and more frequent. By my senior year, I was basically paying half their household expenses while drowning in my own student loans and working 30 hours a week at Target. But here's the insidious part. They were really good at making me feel like a hero for it. Every time I sent money, I got a flood of gratitude. Mom would text me paragraphs about what a wonderful son I was, how proud they were of me, how they didn't know what they'd do without me. Dad would call and talk about how mature and responsible I was, how I was nothing like other kids my age. It felt good. For a kid who'd spent most of his life feeling invisible next to his charismatic younger brother, being seen as the family savior was intoxicating. I was important. I was needed. I was the hero of the story. What I didn't see was the dynamic they were creating. Every time I solved a problem with money, they learned they didn't have to solve it themselves. Every time I bailed them out of a crisis, they learned that crises weren't really their responsibility. They were training me to be their safety net, and I was enthusiastically volunteering for the job. After graduation in 2020, I got my entry-level position at the shipping company and moved into a small one-bedroom apartment. Finally, I thought, I could focus on my own life, pay down my student loans, build up some savings, maybe even start dating seriously. But the requests kept coming. In fact, they got worse. Now that I had a real job, their expectations skyrocketed. It wasn't just groceries and utilities anymore. It was bigger stuff. Car repairs, medical bills, home maintenance. Always urgent, always essential, always just this once. The worst part was how they'd frame it. It was never, can you give us money? It was always, can you help us figure this out? As if I was some kind of financial consultant they'd hired rather than their son being bled dry. By 2021, I was sending them money every single month like clockwork. Not small amounts either, usually between $1,200 and $2,000. Some months it was more if there was a special situation. Here's how their system worked. Around the 20th of each month, Mom would start texting about how tight things were getting. Just casual mentions at first. Ugh, bills are so expensive these days. Or, I don't know how people make ends meet anymore. This was the softening up phase. By the 25th, the situation would escalate. Dad's hours had been cut, or Mom's condition was acting up and she couldn't look for work, or Tyler's comic book store was having a slow month, so his already minimal income was even more minimal. The crisis was always someone else's fault, and always beyond their control. By the 30th, it was a full emergency. The power was going to be shut off, or they were going to be evicted, or mom needed medication she couldn't afford. They needed exactly X amount by tomorrow or something terrible would happen. And like clockwork, I'd transfer the money. Because what kind of son lets his parents get evicted? What kind of brother lets his family go without electricity? I was trapped by my own decency and their complete lack of shame. But here's what I didn't know at the time. They had backup plans. I found out later that mom had been getting money from her sister regularly. Dad had been borrowing from his brother. They'd taken out payday loans, credit cards, even gotten help from their church. I wasn't their only source of income. I was just their most reliable one. The really messed up part was how they talked about money around me. They'd constantly complain about being broke, about how hard it was to make ends meet, about how they didn't know what they were going to do. But then I'd see Facebook posts about dinner at Olive Garden, or Tyler would mention some new video game he'd bought, or mom would show up to family gatherings with a new purse. When I'd ask about these purchases, there was always an explanation. The dinner was a rare treat paid for with birthday money from grandma. Tyler's video game was used and practically free. Mom's purse was a gift from a friend. There was always a reason why their spending didn't contradict their poverty. I was so focused on being the good son, the responsible one, the family hero, that I never stopped to ask why 3 adults couldn't manage their basic expenses without constant help from someone making less money than all of them combined should have been making. Looking back, there were red flags everywhere. Huge, obvious, waving in the wind red flags that I completely ignored because I'd been conditioned to see their problems as my responsibility. Red flag number 1. They never had a clear budget or any idea where their money went. When I'd ask to see their expenses so I could help them plan better, there was always an excuse. The bills were somewhere around here, or mom was still organizing everything, or they'd show me next time. Next time never came. Red flag number 2. The emergencies were always exactly urgent enough to prevent me from thinking too hard about them. Never, we'll need help next month. Always, we need help by tomorrow or we're screwed. No time to research, no time to ask questions, just immediate panic and the need for instant solutions. Red flag number 3. My help never actually solved anything. I'd pay their electric bill in January, and they'd need help with the electric bill again in March. I'd cover their rent in April, and they'd be behind on rent again in June. If my money was actually helping, shouldn't their situation have improved over time? Red flag number 4. They never contributed anything to family gatherings or events, but always had opinions about how things should be done. When we had family dinners, I'd bring food and drinks. When it was someone's birthday, I'd chip in for gifts. But somehow they always showed up empty-handed, with elaborate excuses about why they couldn't contribute. Red flag number 5. Tyler's lifestyle never matched his income. This was the big one I should have caught. He was making maybe $1,600 a month at the comic book store, but he had expensive hobbies, ate out regularly, bought new clothes, went to concerts and movies. Even living at home rent-free, his expenses should have exceeded his income. Where was the extra money coming from? Red flag number 6. They had zero interest in financial advice or help getting back on their feet. I'd offer to help them apply for better jobs, or look at their budget, or research assistance programs. They'd nod and agree it was a great idea, then never follow through. They didn't want solutions. They wanted money. But the biggest red flag was how they talked about other people who'd helped them. Mom's sister Janet had apparently been really selfish lately, and wasn't helping as much as she used to. Dad's brother Mike was going through a weird phase and had stopped lending them money. Their church had changed their assistance policy and wasn't as generous as before. Everyone who'd been helping them eventually became the bad guy when they stopped. Everyone except me, because I was too stupid to stop. The thing that really opened my eyes happened almost by accident in late 2021. I was refinancing my car loan and needed to provide proof of residence. Simple enough, just needed a utility bill with my name and address. But when I called the electric company to request a copy of my bill, they told me something interesting. I had 2 active accounts with them, one for my apartment and one for a house in Tempe. The Tempe address was my parents' house. There must be some mistake, I told the customer service rep. I don't live at that address. Well, the account has been active since March 2019, and the bills are paid automatically from a bank account ending in 4127. That was my checking account number. I hung up and immediately called the gas company, water department, and internet provider. Same story everywhere. I had active service accounts for my parents' house, all set up in 2019, all being paid automatically from my bank account. I'd been paying their utilities for 3 years without knowing it. When I looked at my bank statements, I could see the automatic payments clear as day. I just never paid attention because the amounts weren't huge. $89 for electric, $156 for gas, $78 for water, $95 for internet. About $418 total per month that I'd been unconsciously paying while they asked me for help with their utility bills. That's when I realized they'd been double dipping, getting me to pay the actual bills through autopay, then asking for emergency money to cover utilities they'd already paid for. I'd been funding their lifestyle while they cried poverty. I felt like such an idiot. 3 years of autopay statements, right there in black and white, and I'd never noticed because I trusted them. Because family doesn't lie to family, right? After discovering the utilities thing, I decided to pull my credit report for the first time in years. I'd always been pretty responsible with credit, never missed payments, kept my balances low. My score was good, so I'd never felt the need to monitor it closely. Big mistake. There were 4 hard inquiries on my report that I didn't recognize, all from the past 18 months. 2 were from credit card companies, 1 was from a personal loan company, and 1 was from a car dealership. I called each company to find out what was going on. The credit card inquiries were for applications that had been submitted, but declined due to inconsistent information. Basically, someone had used my social security number, but provided different employment information than what was in my credit file. The personal loan inquiry was more concerning. The application had been approved, and there was currently an active loan in my name for $8,500. According to the loan company, payments were being made on time, so it wasn't showing as delinquent, but it was definitely affecting my credit utilization. The car dealership inquiry was from Tyler's Highlander purchase. They'd pulled my credit as part of his financing application, listing me as a co-signer. Except I'd never co-signed anything. I was starting to feel sick. This wasn't just financial dependence anymore. This was identity theft by my own family. I spent the next week making phone calls, filing disputes, and requesting documentation. The picture that emerged was even worse than I'd imagined. The personal loan had been taken out in my name using my social security number, but the contact information was my parents' address and mom's phone number. The money had been deposited into a bank account I'd never heard of, one that was opened in my name but at a branch near their house. The car financing paperwork listed me as Tyler's co-signer, with my income information and employment details. My signature was on the documents, but it wasn't my signature. It was close. Someone had practiced, but it wasn't mine. When I confronted them about it, their response was classic deflection. "Oh, that loan thing? Yeah, we were going to tell you about that. We just needed to get caught up on some bills, and we figured since you're always helping anyway, it would be easier to just handle it this way. You committed identity theft. Don't be so dramatic, John. It's not like we were trying to hurt you. We're making the payments on time. Your credit is fine. You forged my signature on Tyler's car loan. Tyler really needed reliable transportation for work. You know how hard it is for young people these days. They genuinely didn't understand why I was upset. In their minds, since I was always giving them money anyway, cutting out the middleman and just taking it directly was more efficient. They were doing me a favor by not bothering me with requests. The audacity was breathtaking. With all this background context, you can probably understand why I wasn't particularly excited about my 29th birthday dinner in March 2023. I hadn't seen them in about 4 months, partly because I'd been busy with work, and partly because every interaction lately had turned into some kind of financial discussion. But Mom kept texting about how much they missed me and how they had something really special planned for my birthday. Against my better judgment, I decided to give them another chance. Maybe the family dinner could just be about family for once. I stopped at Target on the way to their house and picked up a bottle of sparkling cider and a nice vanilla candle for Mom. Nothing expensive, but I wanted to make an effort. I even showered and put on a decent button-down shirt because I thought maybe, just maybe, we could have one normal family gathering. When I pulled into their driveway, the first thing I saw was the Toyota Highlander. Brand new, still had the temporary tags, metallic blue paint job gleaming in the afternoon sun. It was a beautiful car. Definitely not cheap. Tyler came bouncing out of the house before I'd even turned off my engine, keys jingling in his hand like he'd been waiting by the window for me to arrive. "Oh wow, John actually showed up," he said with this big grin. "Guess you're not too important for your family after all." It was meant to be joking, but there was an edge to it that I didn't like. Like he was testing me or trying to establish some kind of dominance. Inside, the atmosphere was weird. Mom was being overly cheerful in that fake way people get when they're hiding something big. She kept hugging me and telling me how handsome I looked and how proud she was of me. Dad was avoiding eye contact, just grunting hello and immediately turning back to the TV. Tyler, meanwhile, was practically vibrating with excitement. He kept finding excuses to mention his new ride, and asking if I'd seen it parked outside. The keys never left his hand. He was constantly fidgeting with them, making sure they made noise. Dinner was awkward from the start. Mom had made pot roast, which was nice, but the conversation was stilted and strange. They kept talking about Tyler's career at the comic book store like he was running a Fortune 500 company. Tyler's been getting more responsibilities at work, Mom said proudly. They're letting him handle special orders now. And I'm thinking about starting a podcast about comic book investing, Tyler added. There's real money in collectibles if you know what you're doing. Nobody asked about my work, my life, my interests. Nothing. It was just Tyler this, Tyler that, while I sat there thinking about the $3,200 I'd sent them 2 weeks earlier for what Mom had called emergency car repairs. After dinner, Dad stood up and cleared his throat like he was about to make a big announcement. I want to make a toast, he said, raising his glass of Diet Coke. I thought maybe finally. Maybe they'd acknowledge that it was my birthday, that I'd been helping them out. Something. To Tyler, he continued, for never giving up on his dreams and for always being there when this family needs him most. For sticking by us through thick and thin. I nearly choked on my drink. Tyler had been unemployed more months than he'd been employed in the past 3 years. He contributed maybe $300 a month to household expenses on his best months. But somehow, he was the family hero. Tyler beamed and raised his glass. Thanks, Dad. Family first, always. Then came present time. This was the moment that broke something fundamental in my relationship with these people. Tyler's present was the keys to the Highlander. Not just keys, the actual gift was the car itself. A $38,000 vehicle, fully loaded, brand new off the lot. Mom and Dad had apparently been planning this surprise for months. We know how hard you've been working, Mom told Tyler as she handed him the keys. And we know your old car was giving you trouble. We wanted to make sure you had reliable transportation. Tyler's old car was a 2018 Honda Civic that ran perfectly fine. The trouble it was giving him was that it wasn't impressive enough for his taste. My present was handed to me after Tyler's celebration died down. A Walmart gift card. $20. Not in an envelope, not wrapped, just the plastic card slid across the table like a tip for a waiter. Figured you could use it for groceries or gas or whatever, Mom said, already looking at her phone instead of me. $20. For my 29th birthday. After years of sending them thousands of dollars a month. After paying their utilities without knowing it. After having my identity stolen for loans and car purchases. Tyler got a $38,000 car. I got a $20 gift card to Walmart. And that's when it clicked. I wasn't their son. I was their ATM with legs and feelings they had to occasionally pretend to care about. I left that dinner without making a scene, just mumbled thanks and said I had to get home early for work the next day. But driving back to my apartment, my mind was racing. How exactly did they afford a $38,000 car when they'd been asking me for emergency money just 2 weeks earlier? The math didn't add up. Even if Dad was working full-time at $18 an hour and Tyler was pulling in his usual $400 a month from the comic store, their combined income was maybe $3,500 a month. With rent, utilities, food, and other expenses, there was no way they had car payment money left over, let alone down payment money, unless the utilities weren't actually their expense, unless someone else was covering their basic living costs, freeing up their income for luxuries like new cars. I got home and immediately started going through my bank statements with fresh eyes, really looking at them, not just glancing at the balance like I usually did. The numbers were staggering. In the past 2 years, I'd transferred $47,832 directly to them through various requests. That was money I'd consciously sent, thinking I was helping with emergencies and basic needs. But the autopay utilities added another $10,032 over the same period. Money I'd been paying without realizing it while they asked for help with bills I was already covering. So in total, I'd given them $57,864 over 24 months. That's $2,411 per month, every month, for 2 solid years. More than most people's rent. More than some people make in a month total. And what did I have to show for it? A $20 Walmart gift card and a lecture about family loyalty. But the financial analysis was just the beginning. I started looking at their social media with new eyes, taking screenshots of everything that showed them spending money they supposedly didn't have. Facebook posts about dinner at Olive Garden, Outback Steakhouse, P.F. Chang's. Not special occasions, just random Tuesday nights out. Mom posting pictures of her meals with captions like, treating ourselves, and date night. Instagram stories from Tyler showing off new clothes, new shoes, new electronics. A $300 mechanical keyboard for his gaming setup, A $200 pair of sneakers because his old ones were getting worn out, concert tickets to shows I didn't even know he was attending, mom's Pinterest boards full of home decor purchases, new throw pillows, decorative vases, scented candles, wall art, small stuff individually, but it added up to hundreds of dollars a month in non-essential purchases. And dad's hobby expenses. He was into model trains, which is fine, but those things aren't cheap. New locomotive models, track pieces, landscape materials for his layout in the garage. Easily $200 to $300 a month in hobby spending. All of this while crying poverty to me and asking for help with basic necessities. But the real smoking gun was Tyler's TikTok account, which I'd never bothered to check before. He'd been posting videos about his lifestyle, his side hustles, his advice for young people trying to make it. In one video from 2 months earlier, he'd talked about his financial strategy. The key is diversifying your income streams, he'd said to the camera. I work part-time at the comic store, but I also do freelance art, sell stuff online, and I've got family support for my creative projects. You can't rely on just one source of income these days. Family support for his creative projects. That's what he called it. In another video, he'd given a tour of his room, showing off his gaming setup, his art supplies, his collectibles. People ask me how I afford all this stuff on a part-time salary, he'd said. It's all about priorities and having people who believe in your vision. People who believe in your vision. People like his brother who'd been funding his lifestyle for years without realizing it. The comments on his videos were particularly enlightening. Lots of young guys asking for advice on how to get family support for their creative endeavors. Tyler's responses were basically a masterclass in manipulation. You have to make them feel like they're investing in something bigger. Frame it as temporary help while you build something amazing. Always have a crisis that makes saying no impossible. Make sure they know you appreciate them, but don't overdo it or they'll get suspicious. He'd turned financial abuse into content creation. My financial abuse. Armed with this new information, I decided to do a comprehensive audit of my credit and financial accounts. What I found was even worse than I'd feared. The personal loan I discovered earlier was just the tip of the iceberg. There were 2 credit cards I didn't know about. Both opened in my name using my social security number, but with their address and contact information. The first card had a $3,000 limit and was almost maxed out. The charges were all over the place. Grocery stores, gas stations, restaurants, online purchases. Normal everyday expenses, the kind you'd use a credit card for if you were living beyond your means. The second card had a $5,000 limit and had been used primarily for larger purchases. A $1,200 payment to Best Buy. $800 to Ashley Furniture, $650 to Dick's Sporting Goods, all purchases that would fit with their improved lifestyle. Both cards were being kept current with minimum payments, so they weren't showing as delinquent on my credit report, but they were affecting my credit utilization ratio and would eventually impact my score. But the most disturbing discovery was a joint checking account I didn't remember opening. It was at a different bank than my primary account, opened in 2020 with both my name and Dad's name on it. The account had been used as a central clearinghouse for their financial shenanigans. My direct deposits from work weren't going there, but there were regular transfers from my main account that I'd authorized for bill-paying purposes. What I didn't know was that the account was also receiving deposits from other sources. Dad's paychecks when he was working, Tyler's paychecks from the comic store, payments from the fraudulent personal loan, cash deposits from unknown sources. It all went into this account, and then payments went out to cover their actual expenses. Looking at 3 years of statements, I could see exactly how they'd been managing their finances. My money was being used to cover their basic living expenses: rent, utilities, food, insurance. Their money was being used for everything else: entertainment, hobbies, luxury purchases, Tyler's car payment. They'd essentially created a system where I was their financial foundation, allowing them to spend their own income on whatever they wanted. I was subsidizing their lifestyle while living more modestly than any of them. The bank statements also revealed some interesting patterns. Large cash withdrawals on a regular basis, always in round numbers like $200 or $300. When I cross-referenced these with Dad's location data, he'd shared his location with the family through iPhone's Find My app. Most of the withdrawals were happening near a local casino. So not only was I funding their basic lifestyle, I was also inadvertently funding Dad's gambling habit. The level of deception was breathtaking. This wasn't just a family asking for help during tough times. This was a coordinated, systematic effort to extract as much money from me as possible while maintaining plausible deniability. They'd been playing a long con, and I'd been the perfect mark. At this point, I had enough evidence to prosecute them for identity theft, fraud, and probably a few other crimes. But I realized that sending them to jail, while satisfying, wouldn't actually solve my problem or get my money back. Instead, I decided on a more strategic approach. I was going to cut them off completely and let them face the natural consequences of their actions, but I was also going to make sure they understood exactly why it was happening. First, I gathered every piece of evidence I could find: bank statements, credit reports, screenshots of their social media posts, copies of fraudulent loan documents, everything. I organized it all chronologically in a massive binder, creating a timeline that showed exactly how their deception had evolved over the years. Then I did something I probably should have done years earlier. I calculated exactly how much money I'd given them, both knowingly and unknowingly. Direct transfers for emergencies: 47,832 autopay utilities, 10,032 fraudulent personal loan, 8,500 credit card charges, 7,200 joint account subsidies, 15,400 miscellaneous other expenses I'd covered, $3,600, total $92,564. Over 4 years. That was more than I made in a year. Handed over to people who were simultaneously living better than me and complaining about being broke. But the money was just part of it. The real issue was the betrayal, the lies, the systematic manipulation. They'd spent years conditioning me to see their problems as my responsibility, their crises as my emergencies. I decided the punishment should fit the crime. They'd been lying to me about being broke while living off my money? Fine. Let them actually be broke and see how they liked it. They'd been taking my financial support for granted? Fine. Let them learn what life looked like without a safety net. They'd been treating me like an ATM instead of a family member? Fine. Let them find out what happens when the ATM stops dispensing cash. The day after my birthday dinner, I took a personal day off work and spent it making phone calls. I'd been planning this for weeks, but Tyler's car and my gift card had given me the final push I needed. First call: electric company. I need to cancel service at parents' address effective immediately. Any particular reason for the cancellation? I'm moving and won't need service at that location anymore. Simple as that. Account closed, service disconnected within 24 hours. Second call: gas company. Same process, same result. Third call: water department. Again, no questions asked. Fourth call: internet provider. This one was slightly more complicated because they had a 2-year contract, but I was willing to pay the early termination fee just to make the point. Fifth call: trash pickup. Even canceled their garbage service because why not? If they wanted to live like freeloaders, they could deal with their own trash. Next, I called their landlord. I'd met him a few times over the years, and he seemed like a reasonable guy. Explained that I needed to be removed from their lease immediately, and that I wouldn't be responsible for any future payments. John, I've been wondering when this call would come, he said. Your parents have been late on rent 3 of the last 6 months. The only reason I haven't started eviction proceedings is because I knew you were on the lease. Well, you won't have that safety net anymore. I'm sending you written notice today that I'm terminating my responsibility for that lease effective immediately. I understand. Can't say I blame you. I've seen this situation before with families. Then I went to the bank and closed the joint checking account, the one with $2,847 in it that I deposited for their monthly expenses. Transferred every penny back to my primary account. After that, I changed my phone number. New SIM card, new number, didn't give it to anyone in my family. I kept my old phone active for a few days just to watch the inevitable meltdown, but I wasn't planning to answer. Finally, I blocked all of them on every social media platform and email account. Complete communication blackout. Then I sat back and waited for the chaos to begin. 4 hours after I cut off the utilities, my phone buzzed with frantic calls. My parents claimed confusion about account closures, while Tyler demanded immediate fixes for his streaming setup. Messages escalated from confusion to panic to guilt tripping, including claims about medical emergencies requiring refrigerated medications. Tyler's revealing text on day 4 exposed their mindset. We'll make it up to you, okay? But you can't just turn off our power like you own us. He genuinely believed I was just upset about a birthday present, completely missing years of financial abuse and manipulation. Within days, they secured emergency assistance from multiple sources: county programs, churches, and nonprofits, restoring utilities within 10 days. The supposed medical emergency evaporated once they handled problems themselves. Without my financial support, their house of cards collapsed. Tyler's $847 monthly car payment became impossible alongside actual bills. After missing payments, his upside-down loan situation prevented selling. When Tyler tried manipulating me into taking over payments, I ignored him. The Highlander got repossessed from Tyler's workplace parking lot, a public embarrassment. Without reliable transportation, Tyler's chronic lateness worsened, leading to reduced hours, write-ups, and eventual termination. Now unemployed and carless, Tyler moved back with struggling parents.